Relationships are hard. When you bring two people together with different ideas, preferences, and worldviews, there's always going to be a certain amount of work required in order for the relationship to work out. Relationships can bring some of the highest highs and the lowest lows in your life. Honestly, sometimes they just feel like they aren't worth the effort and the headache, and we feel like we would just rather shut them out of our lives completely. But there is one relationship that you can never get away from, no matter how hard you try. Sometimes this person is someone that you know pretty well, but for most people, this person is as strange and difficult to understand as someone you've never met. This is the stranger you live with. This person is yourself. Philosophers and thinkers since ancient times have tried to pin down exactly what the self is. There are more theories about this than I could possibly list or explain in this video. Some think of the self simply as the construct of our brains. Others point to the idea of a soul or a spirit. Some see the self as a small manifestation of the massive consciousness of some great being. Still others argue that the self is an illusion altogether. But whatever the self is, it is something. It exists in one form or another, as a being that you have to live with all the time. We often don't think of the self as a person with which we have an actual relationship, but this way of thinking doesn't line up with our behavior. We may not think that we have a relationship with ourselves, but we certainly act like it. We talk to ourselves, we scold ourselves, we pat ourselves on the back. If no relationship exists, then who are we talking to? But if we accept that we really do have a relationship with ourselves, then we could pretty safely assume that out of all our relationships, we understand ourselves the best, right? After all, we certainly spend more time with ourselves than with anybody else. Surely we must know ourselves pretty well. Well, since a lot of my spiritual and philosophical background is rooted in Taoism, I'm approaching this question now largely from a Taoist perspective. And to do this, I'd like to refer to the very first chapter of the Tao Te Ching, which is probably the most important text in Taoism. There's a line in chapter 1 that says, "The names you can name are not the true names." This line is partly in reference to the Tao, which in Taoism is the embodiment of the way, or the laws and the forces which govern all the universe. When the chapter talks about the names you can name not being true names, it partly is talking about the incomprehensibility of the Tao and the inadequacy of words to describe what it is. However, this principle is also meant to be applied to all things. The names we use for things are not the things themselves, nor do they perfectly describe the essence of the things themselves. They are only labels that we use for reference, so that we can communicate ideas to each other. Names are never more than crude representations of the things they refer to. Just because we can name something does not mean that we truly understand it. This applies to people as well, and to the ways we describe people. We may know our friends' names. We may know the names of words that we use to describe them, such as friendly, agreeable, short-tempered, impatient, polite, unassuming, passionate, distant, engaged, or any number of other words. But these words will never perfectly describe the person themselves. This is because we ourselves do not perfectly understand the person. No matter how well we know them, we have not seen every experience that has ever happened to them and how it changed them. We don't understand the deep and hidden physical, emotional, and spiritual traits that make them what they are. Now, to take this a step further, I would propose that we really don't even understand ourselves in this way. Because even though we have been arguably along for the ride, so to speak, we are not able to remember every single thing that has ever happened to us, nor how it's affected us. Even for the things we can remember, we don't have a complete comprehension of all the ways in which they affected us. Science is still working on understanding this. In fact, I don't think it's even fair to say that we were along for the whole ride at all, because our ancestors for countless generations have had experiences that also shape and change us today. We make a serious error if we think that we really know ourselves completely. So if this is true, how do we come to know ourselves better? Well, I think the first, and one of the most important steps, is to recognize how little we really know about ourselves. We pick up patterns of thought and self-identification throughout our lives as a result of our life experiences, especially in childhood. These can often interfere with our accurate knowledge of self. To use a hypothetical example, a young girl may grow up in a family where the expectation for girls is to be sweet and kind and polite all the time. She may have felt stifled by this expectation, but was shamed so much for bouts of anger that she completely dissociated from the idea that she can be an angry person. She may unknowingly build up a concept of self that is sweet and kind and is exactly what her parents want to see, because she has been taught that this is what a good girl is. Years down the road, she may be completely unaware that she is secretly angry and resentful because of the self-expression she never felt she had. Therefore, there is a whole aspect of herself that remains hidden and unseen, even by her. These personas we adopt can run along with or directly contrary to cultural or gender norms. We may build a complex of being a survivor, a fighter, a peacemaker, a winner, a loser, or any number of other things. The important thing to understand here is that our understanding of ourselves is very limited, to say the least. To use another example, often we stay away from certain skills or activities because we've decided that we're bad at them. We think that we're being honest and self-aware by doing this, but often we're just creating self-fulfilling prophecies. Of course we're going to be bad at things that we avoid practicing. I've had several experiences when I assumed that I would be bad at something, and after working on it for a while, realized that actually I was a lot better than I thought. Now, I try to make as few assumptions about what I'm good or bad at as possible. I'm definitely not perfect at this, but I think it helps to just kind of follow what interests you and play around with a lot of different things. Whenever you catch yourself thinking, I'm just not that kind of person, try saying instead, I wonder if I'm that kind of person. Try to drop the assumptions you've gathered about yourself over the years. Treat yourself like a blind date. There's a lot about you that you just don't know yet, and that you may never know unless you're willing to explore and experiment a bit. After all, you might as well try and get to know yourself, because you're not going anywhere. Thanks for watching. Peace and blessings.